Hi, I'm Beau Huffman from the Hastings and Kearney GNCs. We're here to help you live well each and every day. So whether you're looking for a good quality multiple vitamin for the family, a fish oil for your overall health and wellness needs, to sports nutrition, weight loss, whatever your goal, we're here to help you live well each and every day.
Hey guys, welcome to the Sports Hub, brought to you by GNC. I'm your host, Connor O'Gara, joined by Nathan Hart as always. We have quarterfinal matchups coming up for the state playoffs, but we'd be remiss if we didn't talk a little bit about Kearney Catholic. Of course, the Stars dropped a 35-28 second-round matchup against Boone Central Newman Grove. Stars really gave everything they had in that one. Just such a back-and-forth, tough-fought game. I mean, really, they went out with a lot of dignity. I think their heads held high. Thomas Connely had 201 rushing yards, 3 touchdowns, really had his best game probably of his entire career and did it when the Stars needed it most, but they're just that one possession short. Wyatt Mazer accounted for nearly 500 total yards, the Boone Central quarterback, and they just couldn't stop him. But for Kearney Catholic, this is a season that they came in with 8 seniors, not really knowing what they were going to expect. A lot of turnover, especially with that line, and really it took probably the best team in C1 to oust them. So this is a team that's going to return a lot of talent next year. They're going to return most of that line on both sides of the ball. They're going to return a really good tailback in Nathan Howie. John Masker, quarterback, of course. It's just going to be very tough to fill those roles, led by Thomas Connely, Blake Holtmeyer, of course, and Jack Graham on both sides of the ball. So this is a team that is going to look to continue to be there. I think that's what they established this year. They wanted to prove that there's no such thing as a rebuilding year. They're going to be competing. They're going to be in the playoffs every single year, and I think that's kind of the culture that Dave Colling has established with this Kearney Catholic team. So wouldn't be surprised to see this team going anywhere anytime soon. And wow, just when you think the Huskers season is looking bleak, they get a big win at the Big House. They stun Michigan, and I've kind of just given up trying to figure out what's going to happen with this team. I think we both have, but Beau's going to take another stab at it. He's got our Muscle Man pick of the week.
Hey, Beau Huffman from Kearney and Hastings GNC stores. Another pick this week playing Michigan State. I got a heart and a head pick. My head tells me that we're probably going to lose to Michigan State, probably about 30-13. But my heart's telling me to go for the Huskers and win on a crazy safety or something. I'm going to say 19-17 is the final score with Nebraska going to win on my heart. Coming into Hastings and Kearney GNCs, we're still offering the buy one get one half price to anybody that mentions that they saw us on the ad here. We're printed off on the website as well. Hopefully we'll have another Huskers victory to be cheering and saluting next week. And thanks to all the troops out there for your service.
How about Cozad? Haymakers continuing to roll. They get a big victory last week in the second round against Pierce. They get a really important, obviously, rematch with Gothenburg in this quarterfinal matchup. Wow, I mean, just these two teams do not like each other. That's a big rivalry. Cozad, of course, beat the Swedes 19-0 earlier this year, and it was a game where Jake Paulsen went off. We say that every game, but really this is becoming such a trend with this team. He had 354 rushing yards last week. That's pretty good. He is 136 yards away from 2,000 yards. But really, Paulsen can't do the job that he does without the help from the offensive and defensive line. Jacob Stallbaumer, Tanner Evertson have really helped pave the way for that ground game this year, and they're going to look to continue that against a really good Gothenburg defense. Gothenburg is coming off a nice win against Broken Bow, a team where we didn't know if they could maybe get to that point, but now Gothenburg is rolling. They have 5 straight wins against playoff teams. That's pretty good no matter who you're playing. They would love nothing more than to go into Cozad and get a huge victory. The thing about Cozad too that you kind of forget, they haven't been here before. This season this group of seniors hadn't had a playoff win, so this is all new territory for them. I think last week getting over that adversity was important for them. They were kind of neck and neck with Pierce throughout that game. I mean, that was a one-possession game in the fourth quarter, and now they're in a position where they can sense it, they can taste it. Jake Paulsen said at the beginning of the year, this is going to be a big year for Cozad. They would love nothing more than to avenge last year's first-round playoff loss, get a big win against one of their crosstown rivals, and move on to that semifinal matchup. So definitely going to be a good one, Cozad.
I think one of the things with Jake Paulsen on the team, one of the underrated elements is their defense.
Yes.
I talked about last week how Broken Bow and Gothenburg may be the 2 best C1 defenses, but I probably forgot about Cozad. Their defense is strong. They were strong last week. They've been strong all season.
Yeah, that defense really sets the tone for them. That defensive line is just so tough. And then even once you get past that, you got to deal with Alex Barica. And I don't think many tailbacks in the area want to deal with a guy that's as sure a tackler as he is. So Gothenburg defense could definitely take over this one. They didn't allow a point last time they played against, Cozad didn't allow a point last time they played against Gothenburg. So Gothenburg going to have to score some points if they want to hang with Jake Paulsen and Cozad.
Overton's really been rolling through the season, and they faced their first playoff test last week in the second round against Palmer. It's a close game at halftime, but they came out in the third quarter, scored 3 third-quarter touchdowns. Hayden Cahoy scored 2 of them, and they pulled out a 38-15 win. This week they get an interesting matchup against Twin Loup. This is a team whose lone loss is against Elm Creek, and they've had 2 really big wins in their first 2 playoff games. Last week Twin Loup knocked off North Central 69-20.
Yikes.
Yeah, they're playing well. They're led by Chet Hinton. He's 2 yards short of 1,500 rushing yards on the season. Jack Gibbens at quarterback. He's passed for over 1,000 yards. They've got playmakers. The one time I saw them play was against Elm Creek about halfway through the season.
Right.
Elm Creek seemed to overwhelm them, especially in the second half. Elm Creek just seemed to have a little bit more firepower, and they didn't have anything to match up with what Elm Creek had. And if Elm Creek had that, Overton has it maybe even a little bit more.
Right.
It'll be a tough game for Twin Loup. They're going to have to play. Elm Creek was probably their best opponent they faced in the regular season. They're gonna see this against Overton. For Overton, they're going to be led again, obviously, by Hayden Cahoy, also Joel Schaefer. The running game, if it gets established early, they could probably get another big win, just with the way the matchup is playing out, I think.
Yeah, I mean, nobody's been able to stop that Overton ground game.
Yeah.
We say it every week, and it sounds cliche by now, but goodness, I mean, this team just puts up points against every single person. I think a big thing about this game, and we'll talk about it with Elm Creek, we talked about it last week, trap game. You can't get caught looking ahead. That's the big thing. You've got to be able to focus on the game plan this week and take care of business.
Yeah, the first time I saw this matchup, it was like, for Overton, it's just Twin Loup.
Right.
But they cannot have that perspective thinking about this
No,
matchup.
they definitely cannot afford to do that. So Overton going to look to get back into the semifinals.
Another thing, it's a road game for Overton, so it'll be a tough road test, I guess, a little bit. Twin Loup has the home field advantage.
First road test for them in the playoffs,
Yeah.
so definitely going to need to get a big road win. And Overton's big rivals, Elm Creek, will get a quarterfinal showdown against number 3 Hemingford, undefeated Hemingford, a team that you really don't know how to evaluate at this point of the season because they've blown out everybody they've played. They've scored at least 40 points in every game this season, but at the same time, they only played against one playoff team in the regular season. So Elm Creek has to prepare for this one like they're going to be playing against the best team in D1. Whether or not that's the case remains to be seen, but for Elm Creek, it's going to be about that ground game. Last week, they got it going with a couple guys that maybe aren't their mainstays on the ground. Nic Crowley was the leading rusher, the Elm Creek quarterback, of course, and he really had a big game for the Buffaloes. Jake Bartling also had a big 41-yard touchdown run. When this team gets those guys going, and it's not all Hayden Geis, Christian Best, they are really, really tough to stop, and it's going to be a tall task for anybody. Even if they are to get Overton in that next round. We keep talking about that, but it'd be such a big matchup, obviously. But really, for Hemingford, I don't know if they've seen a ground game quite like this. That's going to be the interesting test. You really don't know how these two teams are going to respond to each other just because they don't necessarily have those common opponents where they've had such tough schedules throughout the season. So Elm Creek needs to just get back to doing what they do best, and that is pound it on the ground. They need to stop Ethan Skinner. That's going to be a big task for Jake Bartling and the rest of that Elm Creek defense. And if they can do that, this is a game that Elm Creek could potentially get up 2-3 touchdowns and control the clock. So it's going to be really, really tough for Elm Creek. If they do want to get to that big showdown against Overton, got to take care of business. I know this one could be a little bit of a coin flip. A lot of interesting things going in this one, so Elm Creek going to look to get back to that big semifinal matchup.
In Class D2, we've got a pairing that really could be a state final pairing or a semifinal pairing. This is in the quarterfinals with number 1 Wallace at number 5 Amherst. Really is not a good matchup for Wallace for 2 reasons. 1, they have to travel. 2, they have to face Amherst.
Yeah.
These Broncos look nothing like a 5 seed. They got that 5 seed because they lost their final game of the season. But this team is good. Both teams are kind of coming in the playoffs, though, similarly. Just like Amherst lost their first-round playoff or last regular season game.
Right.
So did Wallace. They also lost their last regular season game, but both teams have completely dominated in the playoffs. Amherst will have to defend the pass specifically against Wallace. They like to throw it a lot. Quarterback John Marquardt has thrown for over 1,000 yards. He's got 27 touchdowns on the season. He throws a lot of those balls to Landon Sweetberg. He's got over 500 receiving yards as well as 1,000 rushing yards. Just a good athlete for Wallace. But here's a young Amherst team made up of a bunch of wrestlers from their state champion team. These guys are big, they're fast, they're physical. Last week against Loomis, it seemed like they out-physicaled every single position. They were the bigger player. This is just a good, strong Amherst team.
You don't see that too in a lower class like
No,
athletes like that.
this almost looks like a college team.
Yeah.
You just look at them and they look different. They're led by Mason Klingelhoefer. He had over 200 yards last week. They'll look to establish the same thing this week. I expect a really good game this could easily be a semifinal, even a state final game, what we've got here in the quarterfinals.
That's going to lead us into my bold prediction. My bold prediction, you're going to have a bold prediction. Mine is that Amherst is going to get to a championship game. I think they get to that D2 championship. I think just the way that the bracket works out, the fact that they get to take on a number 1 seed, a team that maybe on paper, you look at a 1 seed, and that's a tough thing to overcome, but these top 5 teams in D2 were so bunched together, and I think Amherst losing that final game of the regular season really changed the way the playoff picture worked out. And I just think that Amherst has so much going for it right now, even though they are so young. This is a team that we talk about that could be back winning another state championship this year. This team could, with the amount of talent that they'll have returning, obviously with Trey Taubenheim and quarterback Devin Dibbern, guys that just will be back, and Amherst is not going anywhere. And I think they get a big win on Tuesday, and I think they carry that momentum into a big semifinal showdown. I think they get into a state championship.
I guess for my bold prediction, we're going to go back 1 game with Elm Creek and Hemingford. We talked about how Hemingford, really a lot of unknowns there. They haven't played anyone. They've whipped everyone they have played. One assumption may be that maybe they're not as good as they look. The other assumption is they just haven't played anyone to prove it yet. My bold prediction is this week they're going to prove it against Elm Creek. They're going to get the mini upset, and they're going to head to the semifinals and get a contest against Overton. It'll ruin the Elm Creek Overton battle that we've all been looking for.
That would be a big loss, obviously, for Elm Creek, just to be so close and to be there. So that game is just such a wild card. We don't know what's going to happen. We break these games down, but we really don't know how 17 and 18-year-old kids are going to react in the biggest games of their lives. So we got a lot of fun action on Tuesday. We're going to be all over the map. We're going to try and provide all that coverage to you. Make sure you follow our Twitter account. That's at Hub Sports Blog. Follow us for updates at NM Hart, at CJ O'Gara. And yeah, we're going to be bringing that coverage to you. We're excited. We're looking forward to it. So for Connor O'Gara, Nathan Hart, this has been the Sports Hub. Thanks, guys. We'll see you next week.